everyone, welcome to Maven tutorial. So in this tutorial we are going to cover the topic Maven repository. So what is Maven repository and what are the various types of Maven repository? So Maven repository is the folder where your all the dependencies, all the jars and plugins were downloaded. So these Maven repository contain all your dependencies. So there are three types of Maven repository. One is local repository, then we have this central, then we have remote. There are three types of Maven repository. So first is local repository. Maven local repository is a folder location on your machine. It gets created when you run any Maven command for the first time. So whenever you will install the Maven and run your first command, at that time it will create a local repository, and local repository will contain all your dependencies, for example jars, plugins. So whenever you build your project, it will get all the dependency from the local repository. If the dependency or the jar doesn't exist in the local repository, then it will download that particular dependency from the central repository. So what is the setting which is required for the local repositories? In the setting.xml file which exists inside the conf directory of the Maven, we have Maven folder inside which we have conf directory. So inside that we have this setting.xml. So in setting.xml you have to use this tag local repository, and you have to give the path of the repository. So whenever you will run the Maven command first time, it will create this directory at this location, and after that it will download all your dependency from the central repository. So let's discuss the central repository. So Maven central repository is the repository provided by Maven community. So Maven community maintain this repository. It contain large number of libraries. So whenever we are not able to find the jars in the local repository or the dependency in the local repository, it starts searching in central repository. If it exists in the central repository, then it download that dependency from the central repository to the local repository on your system. So central repository is in cloud, and local repository is the folder in your machine. So first this Maven will download all the required dependencies from the remote or the central repository to the local repository, and after that you will use the dependency from the local repository. So this central repository is maintained at this URL repo1.maven.org. So now the key concept of central repository is this repository is managed by Maven community. And second point is it is not required to be configured. So you have no need to configure the central repository. It is by default, it is already configured in your setting.xml file. And next point is it required internet access to be searched. So whenever you want to download any dependency, you need the internet connection to the central repository. Now our last repository type is remote repository. So sometimes Maven doesn't find a mentioned dependency in the central repository as well. So it start building the process. So in that case, when it start building the process, it will throw the error because it is not able to find the dependencies. So build will stop. To prevent such situation, Maven provide the concept of remote repository. So this remote repository will be the customer's own repository. It contain required libraries or the other project jars. So What are the steps which are now? Our last point is Maven dependency search sequence. So what are the steps which the Maven follow in order to download or to find the dependency? First is it search the dependency in your local repository. So first point is whenever we build the project, it will search for the dependency in your local repository. If not found, then it will move to the second point, or else it will get that dependency from the local repository. So second point is search dependency in the central repository. Then it search that particular dependency from the central repository. If it exists there, it will download that and put that in the local repository and for the future use. And if that particular dependency is not found, not available in the central repository, in that case it will go for the remote repository. It will see if the remote repository is mentioned. If repository is mentioned, then it will download the dependency from the remote, else it will throw the error. So these are the 3 4 steps which the Maven follow in order to search for the dependency. So in this tutorial we have covered the topic